This is a special report from ABC News Digital.
I'm Dan Kleffler in New York with this ABC News Digital special report. Now less than 2 days until the country hits its borrowing limit, and there is major progress in negotiations on Capitol Hill. The Senate has the broad strokes of a deal that would reopen the government and raise the debt ceiling. Democratic Majority Leader Harry Reid sounded this optimistic note a little after 10 o'clock this morning.
There are productive negotiations going on with the Republican leader. I'm confident we'll be able to reach a comprehensive agreement this week in time to avert a catastrophic default on the nation's bills. The Republican leader and I will keep our members informed as to how negotiations are going, and I express my appreciation to everyone for their patience.
But that agreement, should it come, will live or die in the House, where hardline Republicans could hold out for more changes to Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. So we are waiting for a news conference from House Republican Speaker John Boehner, about to take the podium in just a few moments. But first, I want to go to ABC's Devin Dwyer, who's in Washington, D.C. Devin, what is the difference then that we're understanding from the Senate plan and this House plan?
That's right, Dan. Well, the Senate plan is starting to come together. It's a optimistic development today, but there are two big questions going on right now. One, that Senate deal isn't even a sure bet yet. The question is, will any senators act to block it if it comes to the floor? The most likely senator being that conservative from Texas, Ted Cruz. So that could scuttle that plan. Meanwhile, we heard from the House Republicans this morning. They said, wait a second, we're going to come up with our own plan, and that's what we're waiting for right now. We're starting to hear some of the outlines of their plan. The big difference, no surprise here, is over provisions to Obamacare. We expect House Speaker John Boehner to come out and announce what they want to do. And then, as you said, they'll have to start working on reconciling the two plans later this week, Dan.
But the fact of the matter is, though, is that these are still being considered as short-term solutions.
That's right. Now, the positive news today is that both plans, or the outlines of both plans that we're beginning to see, both the Senate and the House plans, have the same dates. So they appear to be on the same page when it comes to extending government funding through about mid-January, then pushing out the debt limit through early February. So both plans would do both of those things. That's the good news. The bad news, as you just mentioned, is that that's very short term. So we could find ourselves back at this same juncture in just a few months.
And the fact of the matter is that now that you're still going to have to get coordination from both chambers on any kind of a plan, whether it is short-term or a long-term deal, the fact is that you brought up a point that the attention had been on the House as far as building a strong enough support from House Republicans, but now with the possibility that any kind of a resolution in the Senate, though, that might not get overwhelming bipartisan support?
Well, that's the goal in the Senate. After talks broke down with House Republicans late last week and the White House over the weekend, the ball kind of went over to the Senate's court. The Senate said, okay, we're going to work together. And they have made a lot of progress, a lot of bipartisan progress led by Susan Collins of Maine being one of the lead figures there, trying to hash out a plan. We saw Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, Mitch McConnell working together. These two men generally don't spend a lot of time together. They've been huddled behind closed doors today. So there is definitely a sense of optimism that they'll be able to come up with some sort of short-term deal. But again, the big question is we have not heard yet from some of these Tea Party conservatives. And of course, you know that in the Senate, any of these lawmakers can launch a filibuster. They can try to block this. Time is running out. We haven't heard from them yet on what they think of this plan that's starting to emerge between Reid and McConnell.
Senator Ted Cruz has been rather radio silent after that 21-hour speech
That's
that
right.
he made just, 2 weeks ago now. I guess that sort of speaks to the length of time that we've been talking about this, now entering into the third week of this shutdown. And interesting that the developments have occurred so much so that the debt ceiling discussions have been almost intrinsically linked to any kind of a deal.
That's right. This is all together now in one big pot. And of course, the debt ceiling issue is the bigger issue. It's the more dangerous issue. The Treasury Department says that on Thursday, the 17th, just 2 days from now, the government will have exhausted all of its borrowing authority. That means they can't get any more loans to pay their bills. We'll have about $30 billion of cash on hand in the coffers. And of course, every day there's an in and outflow of tax receipts into the Treasury. So there's a little bit of flexibility there, but it's uncharted territory. We've never been to that point beyond the exhaustion of borrowing authority when all we have left is the cash in the coffers. And there are some very big payments on the horizon to Social Security recipients, veterans, others, interest on our debt. Those payments are all going to start to come due. That's when the risk of default would be very serious. So that's the big deadline right now. And you're right, these things are all woven together into one package, and lawmakers appear eager to knock them both out at once.
The biggest concern that I had been hearing both from the House and the Senate is that they wanted to get some kind of a resolution, short term as it may be, at least to get through the holidays, to alleviate any kind of an economic hardship, whether that the private or the public sector might have had to endure if in fact the shutdown does continue for an extended period of time. What then what then are we hearing though? Because I know that the details of the House plan have not just been released just yet, and we've been kind of getting sort of dribs and drabs of some of the details. But the main sticking point, I know that the Affordable Care Act has really been crucial in both of these proposals. But what are the main differences regarding the Affordable Care Act between the House and the Senate proposals?
Well, that is the key sticking point in these two different proposals that are emerging, is what to do about the Affordable Care Act. And of course, the Senate plan had pretty much removed all the big changes, taken them off the table. So we were at a point here the past couple of days looking like Republicans were going to walk away with not very much. The only change they were talking about including in that was some anti-fraud protection to sort of verify the income levels of people seeking subsidies. That's something many Republicans felt that Democrats, the White House, could go along with. Also seeking to delay a tax on some reinsurance, some other insurance plans that would be in there. That also had some Democratic support, particularly from the labor unions. That was in the Senate plan. But we're back at the same place we were just a few weeks ago on the House plan, as we expect to hear shortly from House Speaker John Boehner. House Republicans coming back to the table and saying, wait a second here, forget that small ball on the Affordable Care Act. Let's talk about making sure that members of Congress and Hill staffers don't get subsidies, taxpayer subsidies to buy their insurance, that they're, in a sense, in the Republican view, upheld to the same standards of Obamacare. And also, they want to see that delay, a 2-year delay on a medical device tax that's included in Obamacare. That's been a non-starter with the president and Democrats, many Democrats, but House Republicans appear eager to keep that on the table. So no agreement yet on those points, Dan.
Devin, let me ask you about this, because the House Speaker has said to his to some of the loyal GOP in the House, trust me, in making any kind of negotiation with the White House or with the Senate. Has he been able to corral additional support from those that may have been sort of wavering in the House?
Well, that really remains to be seen. That's a big question here. I think the sense on the Hill and from what my colleagues have reported is that many House Republicans really came to respect the way that Speaker Boehner pushed this to the brink. The view is that he fought very hard. He battled the White House, that the White House was just simply not going to budge. There's a lot of outrage about that, but that Speaker Boehner did his best as a leader to kind of push his case. Of course, you're always going to have your Tea Party conservatives who are not happy with any of this and aren't going to be happy if Speaker Boehner brings this forward, agrees to a vote on a Senate bill or any compromise here. But that is the big question. If he's going to take this compromise plan and allow it to come to a vote with mostly Democratic support, and whether he'd vote for it himself. And whether any of that will have an impact on his leadership and ability to remain Speaker. A lot of big questions about Speaker Boehner.
And a lot of the focus has been on the House and the Senate, but at the same time, though, Devin, you bring up the White House. What has the Obama administration's role been? How has that transformed just in the past 24 hours? It was just yesterday afternoon, the White House had extended an invitation for congressional leadership to meet at the White House at 3 o'clock. That meeting was then postponed to allow both the Senate and the House to work on their own proposals. Is the president sort of sitting back and waiting to see how this happens in Congress?
Right, what a difference a week makes when it comes to just looking at President Obama. A week ago, we were having the same conversation, and the White House was insistent that there would be no talks, no negotiations, and there were none at that point 1 week ago on any of this business until the government was reopened and until the debt limit was increased. Of course, neither of those things has happened. The president now has played host to all members of Congress of all parties and caucuses at the White House late last week, over the weekend, now participating in phone calls. We learned last night, my colleague John Carlos reported that the president spoke with Republican Minority Leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, about this possible plan. No movement from the president today. He's still kind of playing wait and see. But now let's hear House Speaker John Boehner weigh in on his plan.
All right, guys, now you can go on. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Our leadership team met with our members today, trying to find a way forward in a bipartisan way that would continue to provide fairness to the American people under Obamacare. There are a lot of opinions about what direction to go. There have been no decisions about what exactly we will do. But we're going to continue to work with our members on both sides of the aisle to try to make sure that there's no issue of default and to get our government reopened.
We just talked to our members, and I think it's been very clear all along what we as Republicans in the House have wanted. One, we've wanted the Democrats to sit down and talk to us so we could work out our differences, and we've been saying since day one that we believe there should be no special treatment under the law and there should be fairness for all Americans, those elected and those unelected. And I'm glad to see that Harry Reid in the Senate finally has begun to sit down and talk with the Republican leader there. And we encourage that. We also, though, as the House Republican Conference, think it's very, very important for us to stress in whatever proposal we move forward will reflect our position on fairness. There's no special treatment for anybody under the law.
It's very clear in our discussions that we think individuals should be treated fairly, that big business should not have special treatment, members of Congress should not have special treatment. We are very cognizant of the calendar. We want to find a solution to this in a bipartisan manner that gets us moving forward and gets America back working again.
For weeks now, the Republicans in the House have been leading with solutions, and we believe that this is the time for solutions, and they need to be based upon fairness for all. We recognize that people all across this country continue to struggle and have their challenges, and as a foundation, we want to ensure that laws are written and implemented in a way that provide that fairness for all, whether it's moms, dads, small business owners, seniors, young people that are trying to find their way forward. And we, in the House, we remain committed to being a part of a solution, to working in a bipartisan fashion, to find those common sense ways to make sure that we're doing what's good and right for America.
Mr. Speaker?
I'll take a couple of questions.
Mr. Speaker?
The changes in your bill to the president's health care law are arguably pretty minor. Were they worth a 2-week government shutdown?
Listen, we're working with our members on our way forward and to make sure that we provide fairness to the American people.
Mr. Speaker, can you guarantee to the American people Congress will not go past the deadline and push us into default?
Listen, I have made clear for months and months that the idea of default is wrong, and we shouldn't get anywhere close to it.
Will there be a vote today on the plan?
Are you going to vote today on this plan that would make some changes to the Senate bill, reopen the government
We're
till
talking with our
mid-January?
members on both sides of the aisle to try to find a way to move forward today. Thanks.
Why no agreement today?
House Speaker John Boehner making a very brief statement there this morning. As you can see, press all gathered outside. They're trying to get some of the details for a potential deal that might have been cobbled together in the House. But as we also heard from the House Majority Leader, Eric Cantor, the details are not coming out today. In fact, the House Speaker saying no decisions on what we'll do at this point. I want to bring in Devin Dwyer to talk about this. So, Devin, the fact of the matter is we were almost anticipating some kind of detail, some kind of nugget that there might be close to a compromise, and yet nothing.
Well, in their view, Dan, and from what we've heard from House Republican sources behind the scenes here, is that they feel that they are compromising. They are floating some possible tweaks to the Senate plan, which we have more details on. Of course, that's tentative too. So what's happening here is both sides are sort of jockeying for position. They're playing to their audiences. They're trying to test out, feel out where there might be areas of compromise. I've got to tell you that while Speaker Boehner was speaking there, the White House put out a statement. They don't like any changes that the House Republicans have proposed today, or at least floated behind the scenes. Those things we were talking about, additional changes to Obamacare, like delaying the medical device tax as an example. They don't like that. They're back to calling that a ransom, and they will refuse to accept it. So the White House much warmer to that Senate plan, Dan.
And the White House also announcing, in fact, that it will be meeting with Democratic leadership this afternoon at the same time.
That's right. President Obama, who's going to have that meeting yesterday with the leaders, top congressional leaders, is this afternoon going to meet just with House Democrats at the White House. We also know he's giving a round of interviews to some local news stations. So he's going to start to make a little bit more of a push here as we come up against that deadline to keep up the pressure on his end, to rally House Democrats to stand firm, try to keep those House Republicans in a corner up against a wall. The White House does feel that they have the winning hand here, especially with all the polling showing that Republicans have taken a hit. And from what it seems, from the statement that just came out to us from the White House, they are liking that Senate compromise, which is a very small compromise for Republicans, but one that might save the day here.
And so we shall wait and see if the day will, in fact, be saved before those 2 days run out this Thursday. ABC's Devin Dwyer in Washington. Devin, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You bet, Dan.
Of course, we have a complete report on abcnews.com. For now, I'm Dan Kleffler in New York with this ABC News Digital Special Report.